Hello and welcome back to Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, where Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems, and myself, Roland Hume, we talk about marketing, advertising, writing, all of the crazy things that go into this amazing business of self-publishing. And today we are super excited. We have a guest, Naomi Bellina, who is an author who is doing all sorts of things right now. And we wanted to talk about exactly that. So Naomi, how are you doing this morning? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here.
And if you'd just like to introduce yourself a little, talk about who you are and what you do.
I'm Naomi Bellina. I'm a part-time author. I've written a lot of different genres. I started with romance and found a great group right here where I am in Florida. I know, don't hate me. I'm in Florida. It's warm. Ooh, we had to put on socks today, though. It was terrible, chilly. But I write a lot of different books: paranormal, suspense, romance, just kind of straight suspense, some erotic romance, a lot of different things, which is what kind of encouraged me because I like trying new things. When Amazon came along and had something new, I said, hey.
And also we are joined, of course, by Craig Touch, the founder of Hidden Gems and author himself, and also somebody who can weigh in on this because you've had some experiences with alternative platforms of publishing. Craig, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks. Yeah, I think, well, Bella is one of the things we're going to talk about, but I think in general, we want to sort of talk about sort of the idea of alternative writing streams and options as a whole, not specifically, one platform like Vella or Radish or whatever, but you have the reason why, we thought it would be great to talk to you is you brought up some things that I'd never even heard of, this whole idea of the interactive gaming side of it, which, is not something that I was familiar with, but once you sort of told me about it, I was like, that's pretty cool. And I think a lot of authors would be interested in hearing about those kind of options. We've talked about Vella and Radish and that sort of stuff on our blog. And we're going to probably do a podcast specifically around that. And I know you have experience, so, we'll definitely touch on that too. But I think as a whole, like we want to sort of talk about like all sorts of the different options that are available to writers other than just writing a book, that's what we're mostly familiar with. That's what we talk about most on the blog and with authors, is just writing a novel, right? But there's all these other options out there. And I think we want to sort of talk about as many kind of different options as possible.
Yeah, I've so another thing, that was one thing I did. I got an email from a group, a publishing group, and they said, hey, your books, which I wrote years ago, and they're just really kind of not doing much, an interactive gaming company wants to buy the rights to them. And I really didn't know what that was. So I said, oh, okay. So I looked it up, and that is hugely popular. You go out and you get, most of them are done with apps on the phone. You put the app on your phone, you go in and you start kind of going through the book. You can choose different things for your characters, like you can, their clothes, their hair, and then what are they going to do next? Where are they going to go? How are they going to do this? Who are they going to call? So you're really immersed in the book, and you're actually kind of writing it yourself. And so the company just bought the books. I went ahead and sold the rights because it looked legit. But you can write for those kind of companies. They're actively looking for writers, and there's some posts out there that some people have told their experiences with it, and it's very detailed. If you're detail oriented, it's you can really get into it and make a lot of changes and decide what they're going to do and how they're going to go, and you put them out. I think if you're writing those, you can put them out. You really kind of have to send the whole thing in together. I'm not sure. Maybe you could do it a little bit at a time. And the other thing is, like with serialized fiction, and that's kind of a whole different thing. You just put out like an episode at a time.
Right. And I think so for the gaming app, like I've seen something, I don't know if it's the same thing, called visual novels, right? So where and that seems to be, somebody's writing a story, and often it's serialized because I think only because the person creating it is also usually the one doing all the sort of animation and graphics around it, right? So they don't, it takes time to do that, so they put it out, and often the ones I've seen are on supported by Patreon and stuff like that, not necessarily big companies. And they end up, they write a chapter, let's say, and then that chapter comes out, you download it, and you're walking through and you make decisions, like you're saying, like, most of it is exposition, but at some point they'll be like, you have to interact and say, your character is saying something or doing something. And then that does affect how the story goes, almost kind of like, I think of it as kind of like a choose your own adventure style, where, you might go in one path or you might go in the other. It sounds like what you sold, because you sold just novels to a company doing that. So I would imagine if their app is similar, then they would have had to take those novels and sort of break them up into, these choices and stuff. Otherwise, I guess it's just a visual novel with no choices, which is, I guess, is a thing as well. I don't know if or if you saw the end result of any of the books that you sold.
I did not. I need to go out and look. I looked up the company again, and I didn't even see that they were doing that type of thing anymore. And this was a couple of years ago, so maybe they just quit doing it. But yeah, I'm not sure. I would have liked to have seen that. But yeah, you're right. I've seen the kind where you don't necessarily though make choices, but it is more of graphic novels are hugely popular. So maybe that's what they did with them, and some places are just doing that, where it's just kind of more like an adventure. But it's just, to me, it's on your phone. It's on this little thing that we all carry around. So everybody has it all the time. So you can, they're just sitting. And I think the whole idea of the very short things too is our attention spans are getting shorter. What? Squirrel? Because that's what we just don't have. A lot of people like to just read in short little bursts. So they either want, even if they're doing the interactive one where they're choosing, or something else, it's just a short burst that they can just read right now and get into it, just really dig into that little part right there. And in fact, that was one thing, I read a blog post a woman did, why people like them, because they can just do a little bit at a time. And there are certain genres that are more that work real well with this, the action and adventure. And what the person selling it wants to do is they want you to keep clicking, because you want more. That, they sell you more tokens or whatever it is, how you're paying for it. So the little bursts have to be exciting. So while we want to read in little tiny bits, we also want them to be, though, very immersive in that one little, it's like an episode. That's what they call them, episodes, that we want to be there. And the same, I think, with the interactive, you're moving along and I'm in this person's life, and okay, now she's going to bed, so I can click on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a lot more work too. You were showing me some of the links of companies that were hiring writers to do this. And, it seemed like, a good amount of money for sort of work for hire sort of situation. But you have to, like you said, you have to be sort of detail oriented, in the sense that, you're not just writing a linear story necessarily. You have to come up with all sorts of different things. I saw one of them, you're coming up with inventory objects for the person, and then they eventually use those too as part of the storyline after. So it's a completely different sort of kind of writing, that as opposed to a novel, or even as opposed to the Vella Radish sort of serialized thing, where it's still sort of a novel, it's just in episode chunks, like you're saying. So that to me seemed like almost like a different kind of writing, which would appeal to some people, I'm sure, right? But I think for other people, they would probably find that a little bit too tedious, or whatever.
Yeah, that's why I never went anywhere with it. After I looked into it a little bit, I looked at the different companies hiring and what you had to turn in, and some of them had a very they would send you it was kind of a template of how to do it, but it really, to do the interactive, you have to okay, then they do this, then this happens, then this happens, then that, and it was a lot of work, but it was, like you said, Greg, that the money was pretty good. So if you have the time, and I don't have the time right now, if you had the time to do it, it would definitely be an option to explore of a way to write, and it would probably be fun. And I think once you got into a rhythm, the one blog that I read that the guy wrote, he said once you got into a rhythm of it, it moved along a lot faster. So.
Right. Yeah. I'm not even sure how character oriented those things are, as opposed to sort of more action and plot oriented that they would be, because it's a visual medium and you're not necessarily getting into the characters' heads as much as you could through writing a first person sort of novel or whatever.
It's funny. I have a friend who bought a Steam game called Dream Daddy, in which you are a new arrival in a town and you have to choose between these 7 people to date. And it is a visual, except at the same time, it's kind of like a story process, and the choices you make interact with the others. And it's kind of some people just find it an addictive medium to indulge in.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, we were talking earlier offline about sort of the what the audience is for this type of thing, and I think it's sort of maybe a different audience. Maybe it sort of spans the gaming / novel audiences, where people want to be not just reading a book, but interacting because they're used to playing video games, but they sort of want to get the best of both worlds, I guess.
I read choose your own adventure novels when I was a kid. They were the fighting fantasy ones where you I don't know, Naomi, if you were familiar with those, but you used to read up to, and it'll say if you want to go left, turn to page 53. If you want to go right, turn to page 153. And you turn around and you go through them. And it was kind of fascinating the way they're put in, but it's a lot of work. Yeah,
for sure.
But that's like you said, it's appealing to the people who are playing games, because it is like a game. You have to, and also I think, again, get really deep into the psychology. It gives people more power, and they do get to choose. How often are you're reading a book or novel and you're like, well, she shouldn't have done that. Why did she do that? I want them to do this. They should have gone there. She should have dated so and so. So it does give you that little bit of a choice and power in making decisions. And of course, then you have to live with your choices. Like, oh, now she died. I don't know if they do that.
It's funny because I agree. That would be appealing to readers, but thinking about it in terms of as a writer, it's almost appealing to me, because sometimes when you're writing, you have those choices and you're unsure about which way you should go, and then that kind of allows you to go both directions, and so that's
that's true. The alternate universe thing, where you have you can see, okay, different timeline, and this is what would happen if you did that. So that's a good point. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I didn't even think about that. The Marvel MCU is almost that's kind of like what they've done here, right? They've they have all their alternate timelines where they have the evil versions, or the worlds where all these different, I guess the latest one with I'm not spoiling anything because it was in the commercials, but you have the Doctor Strange coming in from another universe or whatever, and so that's true. It's sort of that. And I think as writers, the important thing is to realize that all these options are out there. When you see them, you think, oh, that's a cool thing. But what I never really, it's obvious when you say it, but I never really thought about it, is they need writers to write those stories, right? And I mean, it's true for any kind of video game. You kind of need writers, but you think of them as like sort of staff writers because it's a video game. There's not necessarily a ton of story there, but this new kind of medium, it's like they need writers to come up with all the content, all the characters, all the plots, all the stories that drive all this interactive fiction.
And I think they are getting a little deeper. You said that there wasn't that much characterization; it was more action, and yeah, some genres do definitely translate better with that. But they want to get into the characters, though, and that with the gamers, that they like Dungeons and Dragons, one of the oldest ones. You pick your character, and when you get into that character, you get into it. went to a Renaissance fair here, and you talk about people getting into the character. I mean, they are dressed up, these people, and they get into that's they want to escape. And let's face it, reality hasn't been great the past couple years, so we all want to escape a little bit. And I think that being in the interactive stuff, and the writers now do, though, I think they have to get, even for the games. I've looked at writing just for a game. I see those, I was out looking at some different jobs, and they want writers for the actual games. And they do have to, though, get into the character. They have certain traits, and they have to be that person, and that person has to do what that person would do. If you deviate from how that person would behave or act, readers are going to get like, what? Or gamers are going to be like, no, that's not what that person would do. So you kind of do have to get into the character, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think that it definitely would appeal to the role player sort of Dungeons and Dragons or that kind of person. You're right. So I think so that's one sort of avenue, that non-traditional sort of avenue, and that's sort of like one of the furthest way from like the novel that I guess there's probably others too, but that's a further way, because you're actually having to come up with these sort of alternate paths and writing maybe your inventory and all this other stuff, right? And then there's the sort of closer to the regular novel, very close, which is the Vela and the Radish and the Wattpad situation, where you're still writing a story, but the way that you produce it, the way that you that readers consume it is different, right? Where it's a serialized sort of medium. And I know with my experience with Radish, it was sort of like a they wanted to be sort of like a TV series where you come back every week and there's a new episode, or I mean, you can do it as often as you want. It could be every day, but you can have it every week. And it's sort of the idea there is to hook people on that and get them coming back to the platform, which helps the platform maybe more than it helps your book. But I get why they do that for their own purposes. Whether or not it's the best way to release a story for the author, I mean, that remains to be seen, right?
So it's like back in the olden days before Netflix, and they started. What was the very first one? I think was the the one with Kevin Spacey, and we couldn't do that. We couldn't get all the episodes, have them all out there at one time. You had to just wait each week, a torturous week, to get to your next episode. So yeah, when Radish and all the episode people, and that's what they call them, is episodes instead of chapters, and you can look and see, there's a lot of people now telling you how to write for those better, because they aren't. I never really saw the difference. That was, I think, the problem I was having with it. I'm like, what's the difference between a chapter and an episode? I mean, chapter is supposed to want you to make you read the next chapter anyway, because as authors, that's what you want to do. You want the person to keep reading. So you kind of want to have a cliffhanger or a good ending that will keep them moving on. You know how they always tell you never put them to bed at the end of the chapter? The person will be like, it's time for me to go to bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't quite, I was having, like I said, a little bit of a hard time figuring out, well, exactly how are serialized writing different from regular. But I think that they're maybe a little bit shorter. Didn't you find that with Radish, Craig, that to make them a little bit shorter?
Yeah, well, it was I guess I can't remember what their suggestion was for the length, but it was they wanted to break it out. So when I went to it, I thought, oh, I'll just stop at every chapter, right? But I guess because of their model, it makes more sense to have more episodes than less. So depending on how long your chapters are, you don't always want to necessarily break just where a chapter breaks, because you want to have, say 30 episodes, and maybe your book only has, 18 chapters or whatever. So because you want to, often their model is pushing you to have a few episodes for free to get people sort of hooked. And then there's like a pay and there's a wait and pay model where people could wait a certain amount of hours before they have to get a free episode. And then at the end, typically the last few episodes will be pay only. So the idea there is you hook them for free for the first few chapters. You have a free option for the patient people to read most of the book, but then the end is like everyone has to pay, right? Which is through the tokens or whatever. So, but yeah, they definitely want you to break on an exciting thing, especially in the sense where you're trying to get people to come back every day or every week for an episode. And so if your chapter doesn't naturally end on something exciting, which, for a novel, it is a good practice, but it's not always, something that makes sense for a chapter to end on something exciting, and different genres do it differently. But the person has the book and they're going to pick it up again, right? It's not the same as having them have to come back to the website and back to your specific book. So it's much more important, I guess, with that kind of medium to try to end on something more exciting. So that's what I did, is I broke up my chapters at parts that were more exciting, even if it was kind of like a dumb place to end it. It was like, it was exciting though, so that people would want to read the next one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so weird because it changes the form of storytelling. And then in terms of like a novel or a movie, there's a certain form of storytelling. Whereas when you're doing something episodic, it's like every episode has to a certain extent be self-contained, and yet also have that cliffhanger, and yet also reflect the larger story arc. So I think a lot of us have been attracted to it by like, oh, we'll take our novel and just serialize it. But then it's like, if you want to do it really well, do you start thinking about creating stories that the storytelling format is naturally serialized?
And that's exactly what everybody said who was talking about writing for Vella, is you can't just take your story. Well, for one thing, Amazon would come and slam you if you did that. And they caught people doing that. They said, do not take a book that's out on Amazon and rewrite it. And people were doing that and like, meh, off with your head. But that's what everybody who's telling you to do. You have to write it differently. And if your book or your genre is not really, they said some are just naturally better for that, ones that have more action, of course, but some of them just aren't going to translate well into little bitty chunks, because exactly what you said, it really has to be, they wanted a little bit and they wanted it to be self-contained, and they wanted a lot going on just in this one little tiny piece. So it's kind of hard writing for that. And I think, and that's kind of what I discovered too as I was doing it. I'm like, well, maybe this isn't, I kind of like that because I do write action adventure and I like, mystery suspense. But I thought, this is really kind of hard to get everything compacted into one little bit. But some people did it very well. From what I read anyway on a Facebook group, some people were doing very well with it.
So are you saying that Vella doesn't accept books that were already published? Is that?
You can, they have it's very odd. If it was already published on Amazon as a book, no. But you can have it published elsewhere. Like you could have it published as a serial on Wattpad, as long as it wasn't free. So if you had it somewhere else that was being, and I don't know if that's changed. I've kind of looked over their rules lately. It was very odd how it was set up, but they did not want you to take a previously published book on Amazon and just turn it into a serial and put it back out there.
Right. Whereas with Radish, that's what I did, and that was definitely allowed. But it was the situation like Kindle Unlimited, where if it's free elsewhere, then it had to be free on Radish as well.
Right.
So I had released a 3-book series where the book 1 was free, so I had to make book 1 free on Radish, and then book 2 and book 3 I was able to charge for it. So I guess that's one of the differences between Vella and Radish, or at least it used to be, where they want you to produce, I guess, more original content to Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. And so your experience with that financially, like, did you find that it was, good, bad, not comparable?
It wasn't good for me because I didn't promote it and I didn't have a whole lot of followers, or I didn't promote it. My idea with going in with that was they were going to have it in other countries, and it was going to be hugely popular, because I think with Radish and a lot of the serialized ones, it really seems like I don't know, maybe China, Japan, Europe, some of the other countries, it's way more popular than it is in the US. And so far, Amazon just has not done that. And I kept thinking, okay, maybe they'll roll it out and do it eventually. They haven't yet. So I don't know if they ever will. And that was really kind of my idea was, well, once they do that, it'll take off. And then I'll put a little bit more of a push into publishing. They also didn't make it real easy to find or to work with or to do. They did a lot of things. And I'm not the only one thinking this. A lot of people in the Facebook group kind of said the same things like, what are they doing? They've been doing this for a long time and they make a lot of money. So I guess they have a plan and they know what they're doing. But I never did. I didn't do well financially because I just didn't push and market it. But I guess I said in the Facebook group, some people said they were doing very, very well. And maybe because just their followers and their people, their readers, that was what they liked. And they were able to just kind of lead them over there. Now, whether or not they'll stay there, if you're doing well on Amazon KU or just Amazon in general, why would you put something on Vella? I guess they're going to have to see, they'll make the comparison. Does it do better here? Or does it do just better as a book? So we'll see how that goes.
Right. Yeah. That was two of the main points that I had with, so for Vella, it wasn't even available. It was beta for a long time. I'm looking at it now. I'm not seeing it still labeled as beta, but I'm looking at the Amazon Vella page. So.
It's Satyr at most.
Yeah. So that was one issue. And so they weren't allowing anyone other than US authors to even submit. And I'm in Canada, so I couldn't even do it anyway. But the issue I had with Radish, and I think, you're sort of talking about here, so I'm curious about whether you have a solution for it. But the issue I always had with Radish was, how would I promote it other than to my own readers who, because I was publishing a book that I was already for sale and had been for sale for years, doesn't make sense to sort of push it to my own readers anyways. But I don't even know how you would market a book on Radish or on Vella, because there are new platforms and most people don't even know about them or use them. Like I wouldn't even know how to target them for advertising. And it feels like, to me, I would probably, any kind of money I'd be spending on advertising my Radish or Vella books would probably serve the owners of Vella or Radish more than it would serve me, because it would be telling people about that platform in general. That's what I think it would end up doing, not necessarily in my book, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting that a lot of that on Facebook. People were kind of like, man, you can't do, and the big thing, especially with when you have a series, is you can do that first book free or 99 cents, and yet there's a lot of promotion you can do for that. But you're right, you can't do that. They didn't offer any of that. And it was odd. Like, yeah, I'm going to promote it. Now, the one of the good things that I did like about Vella was that you saved money on a cover. Covers are fun, and I love to support cover artists, so I don't want to knock them down. But it's super easy little cover. You just had to find a good picture, and you didn't have to go through a lot to make a cover. And it's probably not ever going to be a paper or hardback, which is another thing. Some people do very well with it in print form, but I don't think they're ever going to make Vella into that. So it was very hard to promote. And again, since they're not opening it up to writers of other country or even to readers of other countries, couldn't get it. So a lot of us were going, I don't know about this.
Yeah, and that's what made me sort of think that and I still believe that these options are sort of better for new authors that really, they're not even sure yet if they can even write a novel, right? Or they don't have a following and they haven't tried this. This is a great way to sort of get started, right? Wattpad used to be the way you would produce a book, but generally it was free, right? You'd had to put it up there for free, but that's how you'd find out if you had readers interested in your work. You'd put it on something like that. Whereas with Vella and Radish, you can put it out there and actually get paid for it. You don't have to have it all done at once. But I think from a reader, that's sort of one of the risks that they take, is if you start reading somebody who's publishing their story as a serialized thing every whatever amount of time, what happens if that person never finishes the book, right?
Fan fiction readers get that a lot. They'll go way deep into a series and then the writer just stops writing.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of a sort of a big risk for the readers, which makes it harder for them to trust that platform if they can't guarantee that the book they're reading and even paying for will ever be finished. Like, I would be really annoyed. It's one thing if it's free, but if I'm paying, week to week to read a book and then the author just decides not to finish it, I kind of want my money back. I would never buy a book from the bookstore that was only half a book and then hope that when I come back next week the other half will be there.
Right. There was one thing I did. I made sure to put in mine. I put epilogue as my last one, so everybody would know it was finished. And they have a way to mark that this series is complete in Vella, so people know. And I've seen readers say that, like, I won't read a book unless, a book when we were doing books, unless there's a couple in the series, or they know the series is going to end. And I'm sure the same way with serialized, you want to at least make sure the book ends.
Yeah. And that's one way to get around it, I guess, is only read books that are complete, that are already done, which means it sort of kind of goes against at least Radish's model, where they want people coming back week to week, right? But if people are only coming back to read the ones that are done, I mean, that's a totally different. You might as well go buy a book on from the regular bookstore, right? So I mean, I get it from an episodic point of view. I have a friend, and I'm starting to come around to his way of thinking, but where for TV shows, he will not watch any shows unless they are done, like not season done, but series is done, because he just doesn't want to, invest the time and, what if it gets canceled early? But I think more, it's like you want to be able to binge it and just watch it at your pace and not like have to wait a year for the next season to start and can't remember what it is. And I think some readers do that too, right? They want to, especially for a series, they might want to read a series that is already finished, or I mean, I got stuck in that with Game of Thrones, right? I think I was
just going to say GR and Martin is the
I mean, I love that series, but I think it's been 10 or 12 years since the last book. I don't think he's ever going to write it, right? But you sort of get trapped into that.
But I was trying to figure out that. That's what I said. The whole time I was writing it, there were a lot of things I was trying to figure out. And the way you have to remember, everybody doesn't think like me. So, people have different things that they want. And I think the biggest thing is being able to just, pick up the little phone and you're able to read your little bit and do your little thing. I'm trying to think, when you said something about you can get feedback, because Wattpad, you get a lot of feedback. Vella, they had at the end of each episode, and super easy though. Anybody who wants to write for Vella, I mean, they couldn't have made it more easy than to post everything. So first off the bat, that was lovely. That the covers being easy and cheap, and posting it super easy. So you're not putting writers are not putting a lot of investment into it. So you can at the end, they wanted you to put a little note, and this is where you put, oh no, I don't know what's going to happen next. And, oh, well, look what happened. She made that. So that was kind of a fun thing to do, but I don't think that readers could really interact with that. And that would be a great thing to come up with, somebody who's looking to make a platform.
Well, Radish actually has that built in, where you can have a live session after, I guess you can probably have it whenever, but after you publish an episode, where you come in and fans will come in and they can ask you questions and you can interact with them. I never did it, but and I don't really know how much use it gets, but yeah, it's kind of built into that. With Vella though, are there reviews on the books like they are?
Yeah, you can leave regular reviews, and then what else were there? You could do I'm trying to think if they were clapping, and there was little crowns, and they had 2 or 3 different things. And again, some of it was a little bit confusing. People were like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So, but yeah, there were ways that you could have some kind of interaction with reviews and other little ways to do that. But yeah, and I guess I did see some, as I was looking through some of the stories, people could write reviews, and but then again, we're going well, this is just like a regular book. You want, as a writer, if you can get feedback as you're going, because that was to me like the beauty of Wattpad and some things is that the writer would look and say, oh, well, nobody likes this, or this, they want this to happen with so and so I can adjust my writing to what readers want.
Right. And I think you probably sort of hit on a clue as to who they think their target is. Like if they're adding clapping emoticons and crowns and stuff, I think they're targeting a younger audience, right? And I think that's sort of what we see with the radishes and the we used to call it the MTV generation, right? Where like everyone needs their little bits. Everything has to be, their media has to be fed to them in little fast chunks, right? And that's kind of, I think, where it is. I mean, I could be wrong, but I doubt that, the target market for these are really older readers. They're probably going for a younger crowd, right?
And that's why I tried. That's why I did mine kind of more of a young adult, new adult kind of story. And like I told Craig before, I realized I really don't have much idea how young adults talk these days. So because I'm not around that many, so that was another reason I think I'm just going to do this one and we'll see how it goes. So but yeah, and which is another reason I want them to roll it out into the other countries, is because that's when you see it's the young people on their phones looking at it and reading it. So that's who we need to send it to.
Right.
I was in India a couple of years ago, and they said 80% of people have access to the internet only through their phones. So it's kind of like a huge untapped market. I know for self-publication on Kindle, India is one of the big exploding markets. It's like that could be the perfect balance. What attracted you though to not going on the Amazon route? I mean, it's kind of interesting how you delved into these different angles.
I'm sorry, to not going on the, what did you say?
The straight Amazon route. It's like it's like with me, I'm all in with Amazon. I write romantic suspense. I'm in with Kindle Unlimited, and it's kind of like one day Amazon could just like kick me into the garbage can, and I'd be completely screwed. I have no alternatives aside from that. Because I know Craig you experimented with this, and you're experimenting with going into different things. What is it about the different things that are out there that are appealing to authors?
I always feel that whatever they're starting something new, they'll give it a good push in marketing it. And that was another thing that some people were complaining about, but then they eventually did pick it up and start putting it out on Twitter. And like I said, I just do that part-time because I have a full-time job. I write. So that's what I was hoping, is that, Amazon will promote this a lot. So I won't have to do as much promotion as with a normal book. Amazon is huge and they are successful. So, this is something new that they're doing. Obviously, they've done their research. They looked at Radish and said, hey, Radish is making a lot of money. Let's get in on that. So I figured that, again, they knew what they were doing. They had researched the market. This is an up and coming thing. I can't believe Radish got away with it for as long as they have without Amazon coming in. So that was really it. And I do like writing. I write the faster pace. So I thought, this will be good. And it's a good way to, again, try something new and test it and see if I could write quick little episodes and keep, do a good job at it. And it was fun. I don't regret doing it. It was, except for, maybe I just kind of picked the wrong genre, but it was fun doing it. And I liked writing the shorter, but it's very different. And I'm still hopeful with Amazon that maybe they'll pick it up a bit. And if they do, then I will pick up my marketing a little bit and, I would go back to doing it some more. But yeah, that was what originally attracted me, was I figured they knew what they were doing and they would throw a lot of time and attention to it. Well, like, what did they do? Amazon, the Worlds, the KU Worlds.
Yeah. Kindle World.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right. And that's another place where, they went ahead and they built this whole thing and then they pulled it out from, I remember we published a blog about that when they ended it. And there was a lot of authors that were really upset about it because they had actually invested a lot of time and effort into writing books in other authors' worlds. And then they kind of lost the rights, from what I understand, to be able to even sell those books. So they actually had to take those books and sort of rewrite them to make them sort of stand alone, and then find an audience again for them. Where, and that's kind of like one of the fears you have with all these new things, is whether or not it'll still be there by the time you finish your book, or by, a little while later, you've invested all this time and then they decide, nah, it's not working. Right. And then they get rid of it.
And then I did look at very carefully looked at the policies for you do get your rights back. And they had a pretty good rights back policy in general. I think it's only like, I don't know, 30, 60, 90 days. It wasn't anything ridiculous. So that was another thing that appealed to me about
Right.
that, was that I could get the rights back and do something else.
And that's important. That's important to look at, right? And I think that's a good thing too. When you sold your books to the interactive gaming company, those were books you were already selling anyways, and you didn't lose the rights to selling them as books. So it's almost like this alternative revenue stream, or at least one-time payout. And why not, right? Like, I mean, some authors would be like, well, I don't want to do that because of, maybe I want to do something with it one day, or, maybe I can get more money. It's like, I don't know. In my opinion, it's like, why not? You're probably not going to do it. Like when I did audiobooks, I talked about this in the audiobook podcast is, I probably could have maybe got a better deal if I did something else, or maybe I would have made more money if I did it myself and went through the hassle, but I had no plans to. And so when I was approached to sell my audiobook rights, I was like, sure, because it's just free money, and why not, right? And I don't regret that. But sure, if you plan on maybe doing something with your stuff, then maybe it's not a good idea. But I think for most people, if you're approached by a company, I mean, do your due diligence, make sure they're, on the up and up, and that you don't lose any other rights other than the specific ones you're selling to them. But why not, right? Maybe you'll discover some new sort of revenue stream, new market that loves your stuff, and maybe they'll take off for you.
Exactly, and that's why I'm always looking if something comes around, and I think we all do it as writers. We should always be looking out there, go through your local Craigslist, or just look at different places and see what opportunities are out there, because there are a lot of things. I've written greeting cards, and right now I'm doing some nonfiction, but there are a lot of different ways to use your fiction, and like you said, Craig, you don't think about it. For the games, people have to write those stories. For television, people write that. Anything that's out there, they need writers, and there are a lot of different just different ways to do it if you don't feel like novel writing. And I think some of us, it's intimidating to think of sitting and writing a whole novel, and like, oh my gosh, this is going to take me forever, it's going to take me a whole year, and we want that instant gratification. So it's good to, and that's one thing about writing the serialized. There's something even just a little bit shorter, or writing short stories, or just writing things to enter contests and stuff. It just gives you the feeling you've written something, you completed it, and after every episode I wrote, I'm like, yeah, I wrote an episode, I published, I get to drink champagne. So there's a pile of champagne bottles, because that's a lot of episodes I wrote. But it's a way of feeling, and that's what I was reading on Facebook, what a lot of people were saying. It was really good, like, yay, I did this, I completed something, it's up there, it's out there now, and then it gives you the motivation, and you can keep rolling and keep going with it. So
oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's always a big thing. Like, I agree, like, you finish a novel after a long period of time, and it is a sense of accomplishment. There's maybe it's a little less of a sense of accomplishment, but there's still one for finishing any sort of project, and if it's shorter episodes or whatever. And actually, you touched on some other things. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to, because the idea here was to talk about some non-traditional writing paths, and we talked about a couple of them, but it sounds like there were some other ones too that you found, which is like greeting cards. That's another great idea. Like, and that's super short, right? If you can put that together, and I guess you just probably apply it Hallmark or or one of those
smaller ones, Hallmark.
Sure. Yeah, work your way up to Hallmark.
Yeah.
But and have you found other sort of avenues for your writing?
Another big one, and they don't do just greeting cards. It's called Blue Mountain Arts, and they do calendars, and they do a lot of different things, and they're very hard to break into. So yeah, when you get that letter, like, yours is under consideration, like, yay, they haven't picked mine any, but a few of them actually got taken under consideration. I'm writing right now on Medium. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that, and it's kind of like Medium, medium.com. You can go out there and you can write anything. and it's mostly not fiction, but some of it is. and it's either, it's articles or this or that, and a lot of people use it to promote their business or to promote their book. I'm doing it the opposite way. I'm going to put articles on Medium, and I'm doing like self-help, like a crazy busy girl kind of thing. So a series of different ones. I want to publish one every 2 of them a month, one every 2 weeks, and then I'm going to put it together and to make it into a book on Amazon. Most people do it the other way. They have a book already and they want to promote the book, so they write these short articles on Medium. But so it's like a blog, but it goes out to a lot of people. And again, if you market yourself, promote yourself, go out and friend people, you can get a lot of followers, and Medium pays you. And it's with any platform. People gripe they don't pay enough, the payment isn't blah 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 blah. So that's another way to write. Just if you want to do something and get it published, and it's the actual doing of it and putting it out there, and realizing you don't have to be perfect, because we'll just perfect ourselves to death. Well, I can't turn this chapter of this book in until it's perfect, and then 20 years later when you're old, you have to do it now. And when you put that stuff out there, when you go on Medium, you can also get in with a publication, some newsletters. They have built-in audience already, so you can get that audience. They pay for claps and read-throughs. They have different ways of paying out too. But so that's that's a nonfiction way. I found a ton of ways, because I was off of work for a couple months during the COVID stuff. And so I went out there and was researching a lot of different ways. Magazines want stuff. Some of them want fiction. If writers just write fiction. Some of them want personal essays. That's a huge thing. Little information things. There's so many people out there now. There's just a gazillion blogs. You can do blog writing. There's Upwork. I've written on Upwork when I was out. I went out there, and a couple of people I wrote fiction stories for them, because and it didn't pay much, and that's the problem with Upwork and some of those other ones. You have to start lower, and if you work at it, you can eventually. Are you guys familiar with Upwork?
Yeah, so Upwork is a sort of like a work for hire website, and you can hire all sorts of things. I think I've hired coders on there, and you can definitely some writers hire sort of ghost writers through Upwork and stuff. So that's definitely, and then it's just it's a negotiation of how much they're going to pay you to write. So for Medium, though, I'm not clear on how the payment works, like not necessarily the amount, but how, like, if you just decide I want to write whatever article I want to write, and they allow you to write whatever you want to write, how do you, what is the payment based on? How many people read it or share it or view it, or how does that work?
It used to be on claps. There's a little hand there and people clap. Yay.
Right.
But now I think the last thing I read is it's on read through. They see, people, the read through, how much people read through, and they're basing it on that. So that, again, it's another platform. It changes. They change their rules. So I think right now that's how they're paying, is on read through. So, I'm making, like, again, tiny bits, but I'm not really doing any heavy promotion right there. Some people say they do pretty good on Medium.
Well, I think you brought up a good point of another use for it is, again, those new writers, people that don't have, especially if you want to write for magazines and you want to write for like bigger blogs, they want to see sort of some of your past writing. And if you don't have that experience, it's always that sort of issue when you're applying for a job too. Your first job, you don't have experience. They want experience. How do you get experience if every job wants you to have experience? And so it's kind of like, well, if you go to a place like that and you write a few articles, it doesn't even matter if anyone read them or if you got paid for them. You now have something to point to as an example of your writing that you can show to someone else.
Exactly. And you never know what's going to come of it. Like I said, that one, I had those books out there with a publisher, which I just, for years, they were sitting there pretty much doing nothing. And a gamer came along. That's what I say. Somebody might see an article on Medium and say, hey, I just happened to run across this. And, or like you said, you're applying, something really does come up. Hallmark really does want me. What have you done before? And I can point out what I've done.
It seems that a lot of us have the mindset of Amazon is the only game in town, novels the only game in town. But actually, if we are talented writers and we have the fortitude to go out there and throw things out, there are a lot of different opportunities available for us in a lot of different areas. Unfortunately, we are approaching time, Naomi. It looks like we could probably chat to you for hours, but we're trying to package this up. Craig, do you have any final questions before we package things up?
No, I think we covered some good options here for people that are looking for something other than just writing a novel. There's a whole bunch of different things, and I guess Naomi found these through just regular research, and I guess that's another way to find other things. And so it gives you the opportunity to experiment, which is what we always talk about, is because you never know what's going to work out for you and what might be a better fit than something that you thought was your fit. Maybe this is an even better fit for you, right?
Yeah.
And Naomi, how are people going to find you if talking about doing research and finding different things? How can we read some of the stuff you've read? And can you give us some pointers to search you out and listeners to search you out?
You can my pen name for fiction, and this is always a tricky. It's NaomiBellina.com. My nonfiction, I'm debating right now. I'm writing under on Medium under my real name, which is Naomi Bergner, Bergner. I kind of kept the two close. And I think, though, when I go to put it in a book on Amazon, I'm like, yeah, I think maybe I'll stick with my fiction name. So it's kind of, I know they tell you, and that's another real big thing for people when you're writing different genres or even different things is what are you going to use? Because like I'm a massage therapist in my day job, and I really don't want people to connect that with a romance writing. So I try to kind of keep the two separate. But it's not that big of a deal. Eventually, I don't know about you, but here in America, you can type anybody's name in and probably everywhere else. And if you register to vote, you can type somebody's name in and you can see where they live and how they voted. That's always annoyed me. So people are going to find you. And a lot of authors I know want to keep their pen names and their real names separate, but they kind of blur. So anyway, the long answer to that short question was NaomiBellina.com. If you want to find some of my nonfiction, it's Naomi Bergner, Bergner.com. And who knows? Eventually the two might merge and I'll come up with the whole third name.
That's awesome. Well, we will make sure there are links down in the description down below. Okay. And also, if you are joining us for the first time, make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button, all of the social media things. If you want to leave us a review to this podcast, that would be awesome. Craig, do you have any final words?
No, I think I want to thank Naomi for joining us and lots of good information here today. So hopefully somebody listening finds whatever their fit is.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Join us again on the next episode of Fully Booked, and we will see you soon.